Welcome to Book Talks, where stories aren't just read, they're understood. Today, the book under discussion is The Stranger by Albert Camus. Imagine you are on trial for your life, right? Facing a murder charge.
Right, the absolute highest stakes possible.
Exactly. But instead of the prosecutor focusing on the weapon or, the victim or even the crime scene, he points this dramatic finger at you and demands to know why you drank a cup of cafe au lait and went to a comedy movie a few days prior.
It's a completely disorienting scenario to even picture. We expect justice to be driven by, facts and evidence, not some audit of your personal grieving process.
Yeah, but that staggering, almost surreal reality is the exact predicament at the heart of our deep dive today. Our mission is to navigate this bizarre system through the protagonist, Meursault.
A man who is just completely alienated from society's emotional expectations.
Right. And we really want to uncover how his brutal honesty about his feelings, or, well, his lack thereof, ultimately leads to his downfall. Basically, a man on trial for not crying at his mother's funeral.
To really grasp how a modern legal system could arrive at that, we have to establish Meursault's baseline, the architecture of his detachment.
Yeah, and the text opens with what has to be the most jarring first lines in, 20th century literature. Mother died today, or maybe yesterday, I can't be sure.
It hits you like a cold shower. You brace yourself for the inner thoughts of a grieving son, and instead...
Instead, he sounds vaguely annoyed by the telegram, like it's a logistical inconvenience.
Exactly. So he takes a bus to the Home for Aged Persons in Marengo, and what stands out immediately is how everything is filtered strictly through his five senses.
Yeah, he actively refuses the caretaker's offer to open the coffin to see his mother one last time.
Right. He just sits there by the casket, smokes a cigarette, and drinks a cup of cafe au lait. And then at the funeral the next day, he isn't reflecting on her legacy at all.
No, he's just complaining about the heat. He's totally consumed by the oppressive, blinding sun, the glare off the white walls, the sweat in his eyes.
He even watches his mother's old friend, Thomas Paris, literally faint into the dirt from the heat and emotional strain. And Meursault just registers zero internal grief.
I mean, think about the last time you were at a really solemn event, a funeral or a long graduation. Weren't you secretly, at least for a second, just thinking about how much your shoes hurt? Or when lunch is?
Oh, absolutely.
Meursault is just the guy who experiences that physical discomfort and actually states it out loud. He doesn't have the shame or the filter the rest of us use.
Because he experiences the physical world so intensely, it completely overrides the expected emotional landscape. And that carries right into the very next day.
Yeah, he goes back to Algiers, goes for a swim, and bumps into Marie Cardona, his former co-worker.
And things escalate quickly there.
Very quickly. They flirt, go to see a Fernando comedy, and they sleep together, literally the day after the funeral.
And then Sunday rolls around. He spends the entire day just sitting on his balcony watching people walk by. And his big philosophical conclusion at the end of the day is, nothing in my life had changed.
It's like he's an alien anthropologist observing human life, right? He can describe the physical world perfectly, but he completely missed downloading the emotional software everyone else has.
That alien anthropologist analogy is perfect. You see it vividly with his neighbors, too, like the old man, Salomano, who has this incredibly toxic, abusive relationship with his scabby dog.
Yeah, they just constantly scream at each other.
Right. And next door is Raymond Sintes, who is widely reputed to be a pimp.
Which is undeniably bad news. But Raymond asks Meursault to write a manipulative letter to lure his mistress back so he can punish her. And Meursault just does it.
He does it because he says he has no reason not to satisfy him. He doesn't judge Raymond. He doesn't judge Salomano.
He observes their chaos with the same neutrality he uses for the weather.
Exactly. It's this profound structural passivity.
But wait, is Meursault really emotionless? Or is he just the only person brutally honest enough to admit that physical sensations often override our expected emotional responses?
That's the core tension. But drifting passively like that isn't harmless. When you leave a vacuum, the world makes choices for you. And this passivity bleeds into his whole life.
Right, like when his boss offers him a job in Paris, most people would be thrilled. Meursault basically shrugs and says one life is as good as another.
And Marie tries to penetrate that detachment, too.
Mm-hmm.
She asks if he loves her, and he says it has no meaning. But probably not.
Which is wild. And then she asks to marry him, and he's like, sure, if you want, but it makes no difference. I mean, it's amazing she stays with him.
Well, for Meursault, giving false significance to marriage would be a lie. And he absolutely refuses to lie.
Yeah, he really refuses to play the game.
There's actually a fascinating scene that contrasts this. At Celeste's restaurant, he watches this robot woman, who meticulously ticks off radio programs in a magazine.
She just sounds super eccentric. Why is he so mesmerized by her?
Because she represents the extreme opposite of him. She's hyper-mechanized, blindly following society's meticulous, meaningless schedules. They're both absurd figures, just on opposite ends of the spectrum.
That makes sense. But Meursault's lack of intentionality is about to literally collide with reality.
Right, the trip to the beach.
Yeah, Raymond invites Meursault and Marie to his friend Masson's beach house. But the violent consequences of Raymond's life follow them there. The brother of the mistress Raymond abused shows up with some friends.
And it boils over. Raymond gets slashed in the arm and the mouth.
They retreat and patch him up, but Meursault's reaction is so strange. He doesn't panic about the stabbing. He's just overwhelmed by the midday sun.
He wants relief, so he wanders back down the beach alone to find a cool spring. And waiting there is the man who slashed Raymond.
The description of the heat here is suffocating. Meursault compares the intensity of the sun pressing on his skull to the day of his mother's funeral.
It's all physical pressure.
Right. He takes one step forward. The arid man draws his knife. The sun flashes off the steel, blinding Meursault with sweat. The gun he took from Raymond earlier is in his pocket. The trigger just gives. He fires one shot.
And then he pauses.
Yeah, he pauses, and then fires 4 more times. He calls them 4 fateful raps on the door of my undoing. But wait, let me push back here. He shoots a man essentially because the sun was in his eyes.
It sounds absurd, doesn't it?
It feels like the oppressive sun is the actual villain. Can we really hold him entirely responsible if he was practically delirious?
Well, you're hitting on Camus's core philosophy here, the absurd. It's the clash between our desire for logic and a completely indifferent universe.
So the sun represents that hostile, indifferent universe.
Exactly. The first shot is almost a mechanical reflex to sensory overload, but the pause and then the 4 deliberate shots, it changes everything.
That becomes an active choice.
Yes. By firing those 4 extra bullets, he transitions from a passive observer to an active participant in his own destruction.
And that throws him directly into the grinding machinery of the justice system. But the investigation is totally baffling. It's less a homicide investigation and more of a theological inquisition.
Because society doesn't know what to do with a man who won't play his emotional role.
Right. The magistrate is obsessed with the pause between the shots. But then he pulls out a silver crucifix, shoves it in Meursault's face, and demands he accept God.
And Meursault just calmly says he doesn't believe in God.
Which horrifies the magistrate. He literally dubs him Mr. Antichrist.
The magistrate isn't trying to solve a murder anymore. He's trying to validate his own worldview. Society needs you to sin, feel remorse, repent, and then the moral order is restored.
And Meursault's indifference threatens to collapse that whole foundation.
Exactly. If Meursault doesn't need forgiveness, the magistrate's entire life is built on a lie.
So Meursault goes to his cell. Marie visits once in this chaotic, screaming visitor's room. But then he just settles in. He decides a man could live 100 years in prison on just one day's memories.
He kills time by obsessing over a scrap of newspaper he finds under his mattress. The story of the check man.
Oh, wow. That story is so dark.
It really is.
A guy leaves his village, gets rich, comes back 25 years later with his family. He wants to surprise his mother and sister who run a hotel, so he books a room under a fake name, flashing all this cash.
And because they don't recognize him?
Right. They just want the money, so they bludgeon him to death in the night. When his wife shows up and reveals who he was, the mother hangs herself and the sister throws herself down a well.
It's a perfect miniature parable of the absurd.
How so?
The check man played a game with the truth. He tried to manufacture a dramatic, sentimental narrative instead of just being honest. And in a universe that doesn't care about human logic, relying on theatrical illusions leads to tragedy.
Which perfectly sets up the theatrical absurdity of Meursault's own trial. The stifling heat is back, there are journalists with straw fans, but the prosecution barely mentions the actual shooting on the beach.
No, they build their entire case on the funeral in Marengo.
They bring in the warden, the doorkeeper, Perez, Marie, just to prove he smoked, drank coffee, and went to a comedy after his mom died.
It's insane.
I mean, it's like getting fired for taking home a box of paper clips when you actually burn down the entire office building. They're prosecuting the completely wrong crime. They aren't trying him for shooting a man, they're trying him for not crying at a funeral.
That is the exact dynamic. The murder is almost a secondary offense. The unforgivable crime is failing to perform the socially mandated rituals of grief.
The prosecutor says he has a blank for a soul. He even says Meursault is morally guilty of the parricide case scheduled for the next day.
The leap of logic is astounding. And when the court asks Meursault for his motive, what does he say?
He just awkwardly blurts out that he did it because of the sun, and the whole courtroom just laughs at him.
Even his own lawyer is embarrassed. The defense attorney essentially speaks as if he is Meursault, trying to paste a fictional, remorseful narrative over his blank slate.
Meursault is completely erased from his own trial, and then the verdict comes down. Guilty. But they don't just send him to prison.
No, because his lack of emotion is seen as a contagion.
Right. They sentence him to be decapitated in a public place in the name of the French people. It's a purge.
They execute him because his existence proves their rules are arbitrary. And as he waits for death, he becomes obsessed with the machinery of the guillotine.
Yeah, he's so disappointed it's flat on the ground and not up on a scaffold. He spends nights desperately looking for a loophole, hoping he remembers the story of the machine breaking down.
But the terrifying realization sets in. There are no loopholes.
It's a mathematical certainty.
Right. And he realizes that whether he dies tomorrow by the blade or in 40 years naturally, the final outcome is the same. Death is the one inescapable truth.
But then we get to the climax. The chaplain visits him, against his wishes, and the chaplain is just like the magistrate, totally determined to force Meursault to seek God's forgiveness.
He tells Meursault to look for a divine face on the cell walls. He's selling the ultimate societal comfort script.
It's like he's trying to force a VR headset over Meursault's eyes to show him heaven so he doesn't look at the cold stone of reality.
That's a great way to put it.
But through the whole book, Meursault has been so passive. But here, he literally grabs the priest by the cassock and explodes in a rage. He screams that the priest's certainties aren't worth a single strand of a woman's hair.
He says it is better to burn than to disappear.
Doesn't this massive outburst show that he actually does care deeply about something? That he's willing to die for his right to his own truth without society's comforting lie?
Absolutely. It's a stunning philosophical awakening. By violently rejecting those illusions, he accepts the raw, unvarnished truth of his existence.
And after the guards drag the priest away, he finds this final peace. Washed clean of hope, he says he lays his heart open to the benign indifference of the universe.
He finally understands why his mother took a fiancé at the very end of her life.
Because if the universe is indifferent, it isn't a tragedy.
Exactly. It's liberation. He is free to just exist without the crushing weight of cosmic expectations.
And he goes out with this deeply defiant hope. He hopes there's a huge crowd at his execution greeting him with howls of execration. He wants them to hate him because it proves he never gave in to their script.
He remains a stranger to them, to the bitter end.
It really leaves you with something to chew on. Think about your own life today. How many of the emotions you express at work, with friends, at family gatherings are genuinely yours? And how many are just you performing the script that society expects you to read so you don't end up an outcast like Meursault? Thanks for listening to Book Talks. If you enjoyed this discussion, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next conversation.